Picture this. During a series of adrenaline-fueled one-night gigs, itinerant punk metal drummer Ruben, played by Riz Ahmed, begins to experience intermittent hearing loss. When a specialist tells him his condition will rapidly worsen, he thinks his music career, and with it, his life, is over. His bandmate and girlfriend, Lou, Olivia I, checks the recovering heroin addict into a secluded sober house for the deaf in hopes it will help prevent a relapse and help him to learn how to adapt to his new situation. But after being welcomed into a community that accepts him just as he is, Ruben has to choose between his equilibrium and the drive to reclaim his life he once knew. Sound of Metal is a 2019 psychological drama film written and directed by Darius Marder. The film explores the ideas of sudden hearing loss through the lens of the protagonist Ruben Stone, a drummer. He battles with the psychological and emotional consequences of losing his hearing and, by extension, his biggest passion. Sound of Metal serves as a keen, if not surface level, discourse about the struggles one faces when experiencing hearing loss, and showcases the perspectives of the non-hearing community through the lens of Ruben Stone. The film isn't just about losing hearing, it's about identity, control, and what happens when we're forced to let go of a life we thought we'd always have. The most striking way the film tells this story is through sound. Instead of just showing Ruben's experience, it makes us feel it. When his hearing first starts to fade, we hear muffled, distant sounds, just as he does, creating an overwhelming sense of isolation and panic. At times, we hear things from the objective perspective.
I gotta see a doctor?
The world around him, full and clear, but other times, we're locked into his subjective auditory experience. When voices and noises are distorted or completely silent, this contrast makes his isolation feel even more intense. One of the most heartbreaking moments came when he gets his cochlear implants, expecting them to bring back what he lost. Instead, the sound they produce is metallic, fragmented, and unnatural. The film focuses us to hear this distortion along with him, making it painfully clear that he was chasing, but what he was chasing isn't the solution he thought it would be. This moment is a turning point. He realizes he can't force his old life back, no matter how hard he tries. Cinematography also plays a crucial role in showing Ruben's emotional state. In the early parts of the film, the camera is handheld, shaky, and full of close-ups, reflecting his instability and frantic energy. As he joins the deaf community, the shots become wider and steadier, creating a sense of calm that Ruben struggles to embrace. He's surrounded by peace, but he's still resisting it. This visual storytelling mirrors his own internal conflict. He's in a place where he could heal, but his desperation to fix himself keeps pulling him back to negative ways of doing things. Even the editing and pacing reflect Ruben's journey. The beginning of the film is fast and chaotic, cutting between intense drumming scenes, conversation with Lou, and moments of panic. But as the film progresses, it slows down. We get longer takes, quiet moments, and scenes where nothing happens except Ruben sitting in stillness. The final scene is exemplary of this. After everything, after fighting, searching, and trying to regain control, he takes out his implants and lets the world go completely silent. And it's with this silence that Ruben finally stops fighting and finds peace. Audience interacted with Sound of Metal in a deeply emotional and reflective way, with reactions shaped by their own personal experiences, perspectives, and opinions on disability, and how they engaged with the film's theme of identity and acceptance. One of the most talked about aspects of the films was how deafness was portrayed, not as something to be fixed, but as a legitimate way of experiencing the world. This idea challenged many traditional views on disability, particularly in mainstream media, where disabilities are often framed as something to overcome. One of the major discussions around the film was about representation. Critics praised the film for casting deaf actors including Paul Raci, who admittedly was a hearing son of deaf parents, who played Joe, the leader of the deaf community Reuben joins. The New York Times called it a film that is aware of its responsibility to portray the deaf culture authentically. Many deaf viewers were grateful that the film took the time to present the deaf community as a rich, vibrant culture rather than just focusing on the challenge of hearing loss. Still, there were debates within the deaf community about Reuben's portrayal. Riz Ahmed, a hearing actor, plays Reuben, which sparked some criticism. One reviewer for The Guardian noted that while Ahmed's performance was powerful, the film misses an opportunity to cast a deaf actor in the role of Reuben, a sentiment that many shared, arguing that deaf talent should be given more prominent roles in film about the deaf experience. The sound design of the film was another key point of engagement. Many audiences found it profoundly immersive, as I mentioned earlier. As one review in the IndieWire put it, the film forces the audience into Reuben's shoes or ears, making us experience the idea of hearing loss in a visceral way. The way the sound becomes muffled and distorted at the beginning and then shifts to a harsh, artificial noises when Reuben gets the cochlear implants makes hearing viewers reflect on what they actually take for granted. Variety called the sound design an unflinching, at times uncomfortable, dive into Reuben's world, and many viewers admitted that the film made them uncomfortable in a way that was ultimately enlightening. The jarring mechanical noises from the implants highlighted Reuben's failure to regain control over his life, showing that his attempt to fix his hearing only distanced himself from true acceptance. Beyond deafness, the film resonated with a broader audience by touching on the themes of identity and mental health. Reuben's struggle isn't just about hearing loss, it's about him needing to redefine who he is, without music and without sound, which was essential to his identity. As one review in The Hollywood Reporter puts it, Reuben's journey is not just a physical one, but a psychological one that challenged him to accept a version of himself he's been fighting against. His resistance to the deaf community, his attempt to regain his hearing, and his constant struggle with control all make the film feel universal, even if many people haven't experienced hearing loss. In the final scene, where Reuben takes off his cochlear implants and sits in silence, one critic for The Verge said it was a quietly powerful moment, where Reuben finally comes to terms with himself, finding peace not in fixing his old life and regaining it, but in accepting his new. An antagonist is typically a character or force that opposes the protagonist, creating conflict and driving the story forward. In many cases, the antagonist is a villain or an external force, like another character, society, nature, or even fate. However, an antagonist doesn't always have to be a separate person. It can be the protagonist themselves. When a protagonist acts as their own antagonist, their greatest obstacles come from their internal struggles, self-destructive behaviours, and refusal to change. This type of conflict, often called internal conflict, makes for a more psychological and emotional narrative, as the characters must overcome their own fears, flaws, or desires to achieve growth. In Sound of Metal, Reuben is both the hero of the story and his biggest obstacle. As the protagonist, he's a passionate drummer whose life is thrown into chaos when he suddenly loses his hearing. His entire identity revolves around music, even going so far as to live on tour. And without it, he refuses to accept deafness, because that would mean accepting the loss of his entire identity. But desperate need for control also makes him the antagonist. Instead of embracing his new reality, he fights against it, rejecting Joe's deaf community, secretly researching cochlear implants, and pushing away Lou, the person he loves most. One of the clearest examples of this self-sabotage is when he sells his RV, his last connection to his old life, to afford the surgery, despite Joe warning him that the implants won't restore his hearing as he expects. When he finally gets them, the distorted metallic sounds they produce leave him devastated. He returns to Lou, hoping for comfort, but realizes they no longer fit in each other's lives. In that heartbreaking moment, he finally sees that everything he was fighting for is already gone. The real battle in the film isn't between Ruben and his deafness, it's between Ruben and Ruben. The more he fights, the more he suffers. The turning point comes in the final scene, where he takes off his implants. And as mentioned earlier, just sits in silence and accepts that he does not need to fix himself, he only needs to fix his attitude towards himself. On top of the film's strong thematic choices and dedication to authenticity, Sound of Metal also faced a significant challenge with the COVID-19 pandemic. Originally, the film was set for a traditional theatrical release, but the pandemic changed that. Whilst the film had debuted in 2019 at the Toronto International Film Festival, the theatrical release wasn't due until 2020, and, as we all know, a certain virus showed up. This made a theatrical release almost impossible, with distribution rights being acquired by Amazon Studios in early 2020, with it being put on Amazon Prime Video in late 2020. And this lack of theatrical release had made it so the film had less of a theatrical buzz and less audience impact, as they were not experiencing it in theatres. However, the shift to streaming may have actually worked in its favour in some ways. With so many people stuck at home, the film reached a broader audience than it might have in theatres, including those who may not have considered seeing it otherwise. Critics and viewers took to social media to share their thoughts, which led to an organic conversation about the film's themes, particularly its portrayals of deaf culture and identity. It ended up earning a lot of critical acclaim, and especially for Riz Ahmed's performance and innovative sound design. In terms of impact, the pandemic also delayed its Oscar campaign, but the film still found major success at the 2021 Academy Awards. Riz Ahmed was nominated for Best Actor, and Mikkel E.G. Heilson won Best Sound, which was a huge recognition for the way that sound was used in the film.